Hello everybody, my name is Ratnos and welcome to my kill of Mythic Uu'nat. This was World 46th, I think, with the Guild Poetry Club. So, you may notice I'm playing Shaman here, even though I'm normally known for playing Rogue. I'll discuss exactly why when that comes up, but the main thing, I guess there are two big reasons to play Shaman. One is it has an Ankh, which is extremely valuable in this fight. There's a spot where you want to sacrifice a player, and Ankh is very, very good for that because it means you don't have to expend a battle res or lose a person forever. And then also Shaman does very, very good single target damage, especially when there are ads around to put Flame Shocks on, especially if you have Lava Shock and Igneous Potential traits, and 5 of my 6 traits are those. So it's very, very good at that. So let's explain a little bit of what's going on here in this first phase. You'll notice there are 3 relics, the same 3 relics from the Cabal fight. I'm actually going to pause this video so I can explain a little bit about what's going on. This video is going to be a little bit longer than usual, but I want to take the time to really explain everything that's happening. So there's 3 relics that are around here. One of them goes on a tank, it's the Trident, you can see it just barely up there. One of them goes on a healer, it's the Void Stone that goes here. And one of them goes on a DPS, it's a Tempest Caller. And anybody of that role can pick up that relic. And they're all activatable, and they all, when they're activated, do something that's good and something that's bad. The tank one, when it's activated, makes a bubble that anybody who stands in gets a 75% shield until that bubble gets DPS through. The bubble has a certain amount of health, and when it gets DPS through, it goes away. However, if it reaches the end of its duration and there's still any shield left on it, it will explode and do damage to everybody based on the amount that's still left on it, which is basically a wipe. So you need to make sure that you use that at the right time. It's a very powerful thing to do, but if you use it when there's not enough damage to actually break it, you're going to wipe the raid. The Void Stone, when it's activated, gives the healer who's activating it a giant shield, and then for as long as that shield persists, neither players nor enemies can get healed. So you can use this to remove this boss mechanic that we're actually seeing right now, Oblivion Tear. So you see this Oblivion Tear has just come out, and it's swirly on the ground. If we play it forward a couple seconds, it leaves this like patch of yucky. If you stand in this, you take a little bit of damage, but then the boss also heals for 4% health, and basically you're going to run out of room because of these Oblivion Tears. They get targeted on ranged players, so it's important to position yourself throughout the fight in such a way that they're not going to go in a bad place. But there are a couple instances in the fight where there's not enough damage that you're going to die in the immediate future. And at those times, the person with the Void Stone is going to activate it, and then everybody's going to soak all the Oblivion Tears and run into them, take a little bit of damage. The boss would get healed, but the Void Stone is active, so it doesn't get healed. Then the Tempest Caller over here, when it's activated, it starts zapping everybody with the Storm of Annihilation, both you and enemies. Not Uu'nat itself, but everybody else gets zapped by it. All the other enemies get zapped by it. When it zaps a player or an enemy, it reduces their damage done by 50% for the next couple seconds. And it kills them immediately without triggering any on-death effects if they're below 25% health. So we use this to remove some certain on-death effects that mobs would normally have when they reach 0% health. All the ads that get spawned in this fight have an effect that they trigger at 0% health that we use the Storm to remove. So those are the 3 relics of this fight, and they go on these 3 rolls. And then throughout the fight, you'll get a mechanic called Unstable Resonance. I'll explain exactly how that one works the next time we get it. And that also has to do with the relics. You'll see there are also these Void Crashes bouncing around. That's the same mechanic from Cabal also. You just have to dodge them when they're big and medium-sized, and then they're usually safe to soak if you're not taking other damage when they're small-sized. These beams that cross the room are pretty annoying. If you take 2 of them, they'll stack up, and you'll take a lot of damage, and you'll need a defensive to survive. But if you just soak 1 and then let the dot fall off and then soak the other, you're going to be fine. There are a lot of classes like Warlock that can use Warlock Gates, Rogues with Shadow Step. Especially if you buy the Racing Flag from Mist to Pandaria, you can drop it down and Shadow Step to it, and so you don't need a person to Shadow Step to, and you can use that to step over the beams, but charge effects and stuff aren't going to work. You'll still take the dot. Specs like Demon Hunter also just have enough leech and magic resistance so that they can just take a 2-stack and be fine. But for me as a shaman, if I take a 2-stack, I'm going to need to use probably Astral Shift and maybe my Earth Elemental defensive also to survive. Anyways, here's an Unstable Resonance that's gone out. You'll notice we have this little Stormy effect. Let me actually rewind a little bit so you can see the Unstable Resonance getting cast. So when the Unstable Resonance gets cast, everybody gets a different mark here. You'll see I got Storm. I have a bunch of stuff that lets me know that I've gotten Storm. My screen flashes. I have this weak aura that says Storm. It actually also plays a different noise based on which effect I get. It gives me like a zap if I get a Storm, a splash if I get water, and a gong sound if I get the Void. And basically what this means is that for as long as you have this circle around you, which is 15 seconds, if you run into somebody with a different color, you're going to explode, killing both of you unless you have huge defensives, like Dispersion actually survives it for Shadow Priests. And then you'll also kill anybody who's near you with the same blast of damage. So it's pretty wipey. Like, it's pretty much a wipe if that happens. Sometimes it's a little survivable. Sometimes you can keep progressing a little bit, but for the most part, if two people run into each other, that's called a car crash in our guild, and that is the end of that's usually the end of the pull. So you want to try and avoid car crashing. And in order to clear this debuff from yourself, you also only have 15 seconds. If it reaches the end of the 15 seconds, it also explodes and kills everybody, kills yourself and everybody near you. So that's also bad. You want to try and avoid that. In order to avoid that, you need to stand on the person who has the relic that matches your resonance. If you stand on a different relic, it'll explode and kill everybody. So you want to avoid that. The way we do this is, so there's the Ocean, which is going to be on a tank. There's the Void on a healer, and the Lightning one, which is on a DPS. In this phase, our Lightning one is on our mage here. And his job is just to blink around and clear other people's storm resonances. So storm resonances just group up and stand still near the edge of the room, and lightning comes to them to clear it. Whereas the Ocean, being a tank one, is the one that people have the first job is if you get an Ocean, you need to get to the Trident as quickly as possible. And Void people, we have wait for you. And so that creates a right-of-way system where Oceans have first priority and Voids have second priority. So if you see two of them walking on a path to collide, the Ocean keeps moving and the Void stops and waits for them. And then you get into melee and clear if you're an Ocean, or you go over to the healer, wherever they are, and you can get cleared that way if you're Void. If you're late, also, our healer who carries the Void Stone happens to be a priest, so they can grip you, which is pretty useful. That's a little secret strategy that may end up being useful, because often you might get caught in a situation where you won't, the 15 seconds actually isn't that long. You can get in a spot where you don't have enough time to get there if you get cut off a couple times. So yeah, that's the way the resonance mechanic works. You'll see I have this mechanic, or this thing in the middle of my screen saying bait tear. The tears get targeted on ranged players, and you want to be really careful to not bait them near the middle of the room, because you need that space, and it's a wipe if anybody heals the boss. Pretty much, I don't think anybody's actually killed this boss after healing it. Maybe one time, definitely not any more than one time. Okay, so you see these ads out, the Undying Guardians. Those do a lot of damage to the tank, and they'll always, all of them will fixate on whichever tank has been most recently hit by the tank frontal from the boss. So those ads are why Shaman are so much damage on this fight. If you look at the DPS meter, pretty much all of my damage is on Uu'nat right now. I do a little bit of damage to the ad with Flame Shock, but Flame Shock really doesn't do that much DPS. Almost all of my damage in phase 1 here is on Uu'nat, because I have these Flame Shocks active on the ads. With my Lava Shock traits, that's making my Earth Shocks on Uu'nat hit really hard. And with my Igneous Potential traits, my Lava Bursts, which are proccing more often because of my Flame Shocks on the ads, are doing more damage to Uu'nat. So because of this, you'll see as soon as the ad spawns here, I've got my tracker here, I've got my 4 Flame Shocks up, and I'm just doing huge single target damage. If we look down at the bottom right of the screen at the details meters, that's the elemental. The reason you play Elemental Shamans on this fight is largely because of that. There are other specs that do similar priority damage things. Warlocks can do it with the right traits. Affliction can. Shadow Priests get a little bit of value, but nobody translates a Flame Shock on an ad to single target damage as well as an Elemental Shaman does. Okay, one other mechanic that I did not cover on this phase 1, let me just go back and see if I can find it, is the Maddening Eyes of N'Zoth. Cool, okay, yeah. Coming up somewhat soonish. So the Maddening Eyes of N'Zoth are this ground effect that shows up on the, there will be a couple of beams that cover the room coming out in a couple seconds here. And if you stand in those, here they are. Okay, you see these? There's one that's going here, this purpley stuff. There's one that's coming across the room that way. Actually, it looks like there's 2 that are here. And there will be 3 such lines that cover the room. Okay, no, one of them is over here. And if you stand in this, when it expires, you'll take some damage and you'll become hostile to the rest of your group. So you'll still have control of your character, but you can dot them, they can dot you. You can't heal them, they can't heal you. And if they're doing AoE effects in melee, you're going to get hit by those, and you're going to be in for a bad time. So you want to avoid getting hit by that generally. Although sometimes we have Warlocks intentionally get hit by that so that they can agony up people in the raid, which is a single target increase, because it's for similar reasons that me Flame Shocking stuff is a single target increase. I don't end up actually targeting any of my friends when they get mind controlled, because A, Flame Shock does quite a bit of damage relative to agony. And B, Flame Shock is on a 6-second cooldown anyways, and I can already maintain enough of them on the Undying Guardians. You can only ever really maintain 4, and 3 is actually, maintaining 3 is generally just good enough. The 4th isn't even worth all that much extra single target DPS. So that's the reasoning there. Let's go ahead and scoot forward a little bit I scooted forward a little too much. Okay, let's scoot back to the intermission here, because this intermission is when we use a lot of our stuff. So Uu'nat gets to 70%, goes on a little adventure to the side of the room, and now it's intermission time. And these Undying Guardians, one thing that they have is when they hit 0%, they start this on-death effect where they start regenerating health. So that's a problem. And what we end up doing is we end up using the storm here to kill them forever. They only die forever if they get hit by a storm. So you need to use the storms to clear all the Undying Guardians that are active. So we start storming. Everybody's now doing reduced damage, but that's okay. And everybody's taking quite a bit of damage, but we also use our trident here. This is the bubbly thing, and we all stand in this, so we take way less damage. And that, you know, it'll end up doing enough damage to get through the custody of the deep, the abyssal collapse. Those are the different names for that trident effect. And now we're still doing reduced damage, so I'm waiting a little bit here for that reduced damage to be up before I start using all my cooldowns here at the start of the phase. And now we start attacking. Now here's when we use the void stone for the first time in the fight. It's just coming out of this intermission. D-Josh here, our priest, is going to use it, and we're all just going to run around and soak these Oblivion Tears, but it's not going to heal the boss because the Void Shell's active. D-Josh soaks immediately upon activating, then he soaks this one that spawns right now, and then he's going to stand in this Unknowable Terror. Unknowable Terror is this huge slam that covers half the room. It does a lot of damage, and we calculated that 2 soaks plus a slam will break through the shield and drop the Void Stone like it did there. And then if you get hit by it, you also get feared, but we have Tremor Totems that we can use to break him out of that fear, or it can get dispelled. Okay, so here come our Unstable Resonances. In this phase, Unstable Resonance, there's not a person carrying the relic. Each relic is just on the ground wherever the person, whenever you finish using a relic, it just gets dropped on the ground where you were. So it's important to not have them be too close together, because then you'll have people running to the same place that have different colors. That's a recipe for a car crash. You'll also notice we have some ads here, and I have a weak aura over one of the ads that says 2 and is flashing. So basically these 3 primordial mind benders come down, and they need to be kicked multiple times. So again, we have this weak aura setup that gives us this interrupt order. It anchors it to the nameplates. I'm the second kick on circle, so it plays a little sound for me. I make sure that I get my kick on circle. The boss heals the ads when it gets to 100% energy, so you need to be a little careful of that. And then yeah, you just need to make sure you get your kicks here. These primordial mind benders, if they get a cast off, are going to full heal and do a bunch of damage to everybody. And when they die, they spawn 4 little ads that do a bunch of damage to everybody when they die also. But if you kill them with the storm, they don't trigger their on-death effect, so they don't spawn those little ads. So our strategy is to make sure that all the mind benders always die to the storm. Now, speaking of the storm, and speaking of the reason I play Shaman, is we're about to see me pick up the storm here. The storm normally goes for 15 seconds, but if you die while you're channeling it, it stops channeling. So you notice here, I go to grab the storm. I immediately storm here because we have a mind bender at 8%, so I just want to storm instantly. It was about to die, and if it died before I started storming, we would have a little bit of a problem. So I actually called here, I'm storming a little early, because we wanted to stop that. We wanted to make sure we didn't get those ads, and I'm actually going to storm here for a couple ticks. Normally on this, those ads aren't quite that low, and I can wait until a little bit later to start storming. But yeah, so I storm for a little bit, a couple ticks go out. Nobody's in too much danger of dying here, everybody's getting healed, but you can see it does a ton of rate damage. And if I were to keep channeling here, I'd be channeling for the next 15 seconds, or another 10 seconds. I'd be channeling Storm of Annihilation. That's bad. So instead of that, instead of me doing that, I'm just going to stand in this Unknowable Terror. Bang, I'm dead. I drop the storm, and I onk. And by onking here, we don't use a B-res. That storm doesn't happen. That saves millions of damage across the raid. It actually means we do a lot more damage as well because we lose that 50% damage done decrease thing. And that's why Shaman are so good for this fight. At least 2 of them for Onk Storms, although more are good too, because in the last phase, if you have Shaman, they can also Onk Storm. Although that's not as good for reasons we'll discuss when we get to the last phase. Mostly, it's 2 Shaman are extremely good. It turns out on our kill, we didn't actually end up using any battle reses. Nobody died except people who were supposed to, pretty much. So we didn't end up needing the Onks. Like, we could have just used battle reses, but for most of progression, saving the battle reses was invaluable. So again, essences are getting consumed here. We try to stop them. When the boss reaches 100% energy in every phase, it does a burst of damage to everybody. In the first phase, it also makes the room smaller. In the second phase, it also heals all the ads and increases their haste by 100%, stacking. And then in the third phase, it turns everybody hostile to each other. So that's the Gift and Azoth that you see there. It does a little bit of burst of damage to everybody, and in this phase, it buffs the ads. And then this phase is just a rinse and repeat. The Undying Guardians come out. The other stuff comes out. You'll see here we had our other shaman, Seth here, died there intentionally while storming that second set of ads, and then the third set of ads, because this boss phases soon, we'll just deal with them during the intermission between phase 2 and phase 3, and we'll storm them at that time. So we don't need to sacrifice because we'll have a trident active, giving everybody a big shield at that time, so we don't need to stop the storm early. You'll notice I have a huge cast bar at the top of my screen. This is because I have a focus target. So I click on my circle mob, that's my kick. Then I click on my button that sets it as a focus. And then I see its cast bar up at the top. And I have a button also that just kicks my focus without having to retarget it. That's very valuable. I would recommend having some kind of setup like that. It makes this fight a lot easier. I also have a weak aura that shows me if I'm in range to get my kick, which is good, especially because my kick is shorter range than most of the other abilities I have. So again, here we go to the intermission. You see a similar setup to what we did last intermission. We use both the trident and the storm. The storm finishes getting used. It gets dropped near the middle of the room. The trident also, we broke through its shield. And now we're in this last phase. As soon as our damage done debuff falls off, we lust, we start nuking the boss. And you see there Insatiable Torment on Kassan Z. So Insatiable Torment is the mechanic that's kind of the soft and rage of this fight. People will get this effect and they will no longer be able to receive healing from healers. They will still receive shields, which makes Disc Priests and people with the Void Shell trinket, the Void Shield, Void Stone, that's the word, the Void Stone trinket, extremely valuable on this fight. But they will not receive heals of other kinds from other healers. This goes on any DPS. It doesn't go on healers anymore, although it used to. It did when we were first progressing this phase, and that was really, really toxic. But now it only goes on DPS, and it's generally best if it goes on ranged players. The best targets for it to go on are people like, well, pretty much any range can handle it, because whoever has this debuff, because they're immune to healing, is going to be our person who sacrifices themselves to use the storm in the last phase. And that way, when they do that, they die and they're gone, but also one of those debuffs is gone. So basically everybody who doesn't have this debuff, it's very important that they don't die, and they're an important priority to battle res. Everybody who does get the Insatiable Torment, a debuff that persists through death, so even if we battle res them, they'd still have it, are basically living on borrowed time. We don't mind if they die. Obviously we prefer for them not to, but they are also our first priority to use the storm and end up dying early to stop storming, and then just staying dead. So one other effect that I didn't mention really about the Insatiable Torment is you can heal while you are Insatiable Tormented, but you have to have people inside this little circle around you. And the way it works is that every second you're going to deal damage to everybody in that circle, and then you're going to heal yourself based on the amount of people in there. So that's the Insatiable Torment mechanic. And Kassan is our first Insatiable Torment, which is kind of annoying. We'd rather have it be on ranged than melee. Melee don't have to do very many mechanics in this fight. We'd rather them be able to just target dummy the boss. So our priority for who's going to do the storm is ranged with the Torment over melee. Here we go. There's this resonance again, as always. I have the ocean, so I'm first priority, so I move through first before the storm person there. We have the our little priority right-of-way system, and then everybody gets over to this side of the room, all the range, all the people that could bait the Oblivion Tears, because we need to be really careful with our space in this last phase, because we need to make sure that we're not getting hit by 2 beams each time. So it's very important that we drop these Oblivion Tears in predictable places. All right, so there you saw our second Insatiable Torment went on Rachel here. What Rachel's going to do is, since they're ranged, right, with the Torment, they're going to be the person who does the first storm here. We storm when there are 2 adds out, and what we do is we get them nice and low, and we'll storm after this Resonance is finished being done. Resonance is a very dangerous time to have Insatiable Torment because, of course, you can only heal when people are in your circle, and people can't be in your circle except at the very edges of it if they have a different color than you. So it's important in this last phase, if you have the same color as somebody who has a Torment, to be in their circle with them to help keep them alive. If you have one other person in your circle, you take damage pretty slowly, and if you have 2 people in your circle, you'll slowly heal, and any more than that, you'll quickly heal. But if you're alone in your circle, you actually die pretty quickly. So it's important to A, clear quickly if you have a Torment, and B, stand on people with the same colors to keep them alive with their Torment. You see here, I'm actually escorting Rachel to make sure that they don't die with the Torment there. Now Rachel grabs the Storm. Both the adds there are below 25%. So we activate the Storm. Rachel, now below 25%, gets executed by the Storm effect, and we're good. The storm is done. No harm, no foul. 2 adds dead. And we're once again under control here. If you don't kill the adds in this last phase, they're going to kill your tanks. They do a lot of damage. They also make the boss immune if they get too close to it, so you saw that happen for a second there. Not the end of the world, though, if it happens just for a little bit. So now we have another Resonance coming out. This is dangerous time here. I have a Void, and you'll see I nearly run into some of those Storm people there. Void has a slight, like, our theory is Void has a slight higher priority than Storm, but that was actually really close. I tend to move pretty aggressively when I have the Resonance there, but that could have almost been a wipe. But it wasn't, so I was a genius, but this could very easily not have been the kill if that worked out a little bit differently. You'll see here I'm targeting the adds because, again, we have 2 adds out, which means that it's about to be time to storm. We storm every time there's 2 adds. You'll see Jason there goes and gets some extra damage done to himself by taking some extra beam damage, follows a beam for a little while, and then just activates the storm, dies to the dot, dies pretty easily, and again, nobody dead except for 2 people. Like, up until now, we've only lost people who stormed. Now, I have a Torment. I get the Torment here, which is great news. I'm pretty happy to have a Torment because it means that I can do the next storm, and I am happy to take that job. So, and you'll notice until now I'm top damage, but I'm eventually going to sacrifice myself and no longer do any damage on this fight. So yeah, we have 1 ad out now. When we get the next ad out, I will be doing the next storm. Again, you'll see we're just baiting all these Oblivion Tears into this consistent pattern. I'm DPSing the boss still, although when the second ad comes out, I'm going to be switching and doing damage to the second ad to get it low enough so that it will die to the storm. You'll see I'm kind of positioning myself so that I'm getting enough heals here, but I'm full health, so I moved out away so that I wouldn't damage people unnecessarily, because if you have people in your circle, they still heal you. Now I'm using some defensives to survive during this this Gift of N'Zoth and during this run to my relic, this Unstable Resonance. You'll see I have these shields around me. That's an Earth Elemental defensive. A lot of Shaman don't know this, but if you're Spec Primal Elementalist, you can Earth Elemental, and then you can activate its special ability to give you a 40% damage reduction. So I'm lining that up with Astral Shift also, and combined I have like a 64% damage reduction, which is pretty big. And then I also am in Ghost Wolf, so I'm stacking a damage reduction effect on myself that way. And you'll see I'm actually taking very little damage here. And again, I'm getting fully healed by having people on me, but now I actually don't want anybody on me because it's about to be time for me to storm. So I'm gonna pick up that relic. And now I want to get nice and low. I want the 2 ads to be below 25% health. I want me to be below 25% health. I'm gonna storm, I'm gonna die, and that's my fight is over now. I don't want to use one of our B reses. You'll notice we still have 3 B reses, but the only people who've died have the Insatiable Torment effect. So they're not worth B resing, because then they'll just need to, like, people with torments aren't worth spending battle reses on, is our theory. Now we could actually, like, we have 3 of them. We could res somebody and just have them keep DPSing, especially like one of these warlocks. We have warlock players with torment, like Damson here, who died. Damson was our first death. That wasn't actually part of the script, but he did have torment, so he's not worth using a res. We could use a res on him at this point. The boss is so low on health, it's like 8% right now, that we're probably not going to need all 3 on real non-torment people. Anyways, boss at 12 million health, 6%. I'll target it soon so that we can actually see its health here together. But again, the fight is just rinse and repeat at this point. We're dropping the torments to the side of the room. The reason we're playing over here is because this is a spot where you can stand so you won't get hit by double stacks of the beam, whereas if you're standing in the middle of the room, you will get hit by double stacks of the beam, and that's bad. The room is pretty small, and you need to be near the edges to avoid getting that double stack. Again, here's a resonance. Everybody's just kind of slowly, very carefully moving themselves to clear their resonance, because nobody wants to wipe the raid at this point, because the boss is almost dead. Again, someone's picking up the storm here. There's 3 ads here, but once 2 of them are below 25% health, that person's going to activate the storm and then go and die. And then we're no longer going to storm for the rest of the fight. The boss is at 3% health. We're not going to cast any further Storm Annihilation. It's just a burn on the boss. We have 3 battle reses still, and 7 people dead, but all of them have Insatiable Torment, so we're still not expending any B reses. Again, we could. I think the call was made right about now to just res anybody you can, but this is actually one of the cleanest kills. This was the cleanest recorded kill of Uu'nat at the time we killed it. It was a rank 1 execution parse. Which is the third end boss in a row that when we killed it, we've had a rank 1 execution parse on. And yeah, down it goes. That's world 46th. I was pretty happy switching to Shaman to kill this fight. It was very useful to have that Ankh, and did a ton of damage. And yeah, down it goes. Awesome fight. All around, I think one of the best fights they've ever designed for this game. I hope this video, I don't know how long this video went, because I know I paused for a little bit of it, but I feel like I did a good job of, I feel like I explained all the mechanics. I might have missed 1 or 2 though. So if you have any questions, ask them in the comments. I'll try and answer them. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.